Well, thanks for joining us today here on Productive Agent Podcast. My name is Rob Aubrey, in case you didn't know, and this podcast is powered by Aubrey Home Loans. And today we have a very special guest, a good friend of mine. His name is Kevin Smullen. Kevin and I, we've known each other quite a while, and so Kevin is involved in social media marketing, but he's been in the marketing space for 20 years, and it has evolved in the social media marketing, specializing in the real estate space, which is transferable to some other industries, but for the most part, Kevin's, his expertise is in real estate, social media marketing, right? Is that a fair enough assessment? Right.
Absolutely spot on.
Kevin, join us. Thanks for coming.
Hey, you bet. Appreciate you having me. Thank you.
Yeah. And so the prepared question, was just a basic prepared question, right? Well, we were just talking a second ago before we started recording. I said, well, I'm going to ask you this question. He goes, oh, good. That's what I prepared on. So, Kevin, what would you say are some of the mistakes or the biggest mistakes and the most common mistakes that agents make when it comes to social media marketing?
Perfect. So I prepared three.
Okay.
So let's kind of go through them and we can talk about them in details. But my number one, top of the list by far, is the biggest mistake agents are making is they're not using it, and more importantly, not using it correctly, right? So to kind of, and these stats, because the National Association of Realtors, they do tons of studies on this stuff.
Right.
The industry statistic is that 97% of home buyers start their process online.
Sure.
Right. And so if you know that that's the truth, which it is, you as an agent, you really just have to ask yourself the question, what does my online presence look like? Right. And how can I really make sure that I'm marketing myself in a way where when home buyers are beginning their process online, I'm going to be part of what's visible to them.
Right.
So when you think about that and consider the options, right? A lot of agents out there will have their own website, and that's fine. However, the question is, if someone went to Google and searched for homes in Utah or whatever geography we're talking about, what's the likelihood of the agent's website popping up?
Well, you mean them competing against those brands with billion-dollar marketing budgets? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, that's exactly what I mean.
Yeah, pretty challenging,
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. So when you look at the
possible, but not likely.
Yeah, exactly. So when you look at the search results, the gorillas in the industry, kind of what I call them, that's exactly what you're talking about. The Zillows, the Realtor.coms, those people that have millions and millions of dollars on their budget, they're going to show up because it's very simple. They're spending the money and paying to show up higher in those search rankings.
Right.
And so, they're obviously running pay-per-click ads where they're getting charged every time somebody clicks on their ad on Google. And because they're doing all that, they're going to get preferential treatment in those search results. So the short answer is, unless they're spending a lot of money, which I doubt they probably have the budget to compete with those companies, it's just not really a viable option for the typical real estate agent.
Right.
So this is really, in my opinion, where social media comes into play. Is social media really has leveled the playing field as far as online marketing goes, because visibility is so much easier now than it ever has been, right? My take on the industry and real estate agents is, if they're not doing the amount of business that they want, I'd be willing to bet 99 times out of 100, the number one problem that they're facing is it's an obscurity problem. People just don't know that they exist, right? I really believe if more people knew who they were, if they knew their background, their qualifications, the results that they could help them achieve, I really believe if people knew that about agents would have more business. But that's the biggest problem, is people just don't know that information.
Right.
And so for me, this is really where social media comes into play, is that for a very limited budget that you really can get started with pretty much anything you want, you can get visible to a much larger group of people in a hurry. And that's really, for me, where social media fits into this process, because you can get in front of that 97% of people who are starting their search online for peanuts, really, as far as a budget goes.
Right. I mean, when you say for a very low budget, I mean, low budget, I guess, is subjective. What does that
Sure.
mean?
Yeah, great question. So if you're unfamiliar with running paid ads on like Facebook, Instagram, typically what they'll charge you is based on what they call an impression, which just
Right.
simply means every time your ad is shown. And
Right.
it tends to vary between like 1 and 1.5 cents every time your ad is shown. So to put that in perspective, let's say you ran an ad to 1,000 people, it's going to cost you in the range of about $10 to $15 to do that.
That works.
Yeah, that's why I say it's extremely inexpensive to get things up and running very, very quickly.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's inexpensive across all spectrums
Sure.
of budgets, 1,000. And because with agents, I mean, agents, obviously I focus on real estate agents as my target because that's who, for the business I'm in, and I always had the idea, let's go big, let's go, Utah, let's go US, and now, now I have a real narrow focus, and so that's why it can be inexpensive because you just need to narrow your focus,
Right.
you know. So number one you said is they're not using it or not using
Yeah,
it.
they're just not doing it. Oh, and if they are doing it, they're doing it incorrectly. Like another way that people try to go about this is they hear people like me talk about how awesome social media is. And so they buy in and they build a page and they just start posting a lot of stuff. And what they don't realize is that the way that the system works is when you post something on your page, the organic reach, which just means people who see it for free, the
Right.
organic reach ranges between 2 to 6.5%. So what that
Two and
means
a
is,
half,
again,
six
if you had
percent
a
of
page of 1,000 followers and you post something, on average, 20 to 65 people are going to see it
right. So when you say 2 to 6.5% of
of your
your
page followers.
connections, right?
Yeah,
And that you're talking about a business. Is that you're talking about a personal profile or a business page?
business page.
Okay.
Yep.
So if you want all 1,000 to see it, then you have to get off the wallet.
Correct. And that's why organic reach is so low, is because really, if you boil Facebook and Instagram, all these social media platforms, if you boil it down to sheer simplicity,
Yeah, they're
they're just
selling newspapers.
pay-per-view systems, right?
Right.
If you want more people to see your content, they're going to expect to be paid for that. I mean, that's their revenue, is the advertising.
Right.
But so yes, it's not free, but the good news is it's extremely inexpensive. So this is one of those huge areas where agents make a big mistake, is if they are doing it, they build a page, post lots of stuff, and they get frustrated because they're not getting anywhere. But this is the reason why, is because the truth is just very few people are actually seeing their content. Right? That's where the paid advertising really comes into play, is because it's not only giving you a larger audience of people to see your content, but more importantly, you get to pick who that group of people, who they are, who's the best people to see your content. And that makes a big, big difference.
Right. So for an agent, they have, I mean, I know there's some restrictions because let's segue off of that. Facebook was sued a while back by HUD for discrimination, because you were able to say, pick a zip code and pick like, income ranges, but now they're saying, no, you kind of have, what's the lowest you can narrow it down to? Zip code, right?
So if you do it by a zip code, it's going to do like a 15-mile radius around that. Same if you do a city. The only way you can really shrink that down is if you're doing it like at the county level, if the county happens to be less than 15 miles. But for whatever obscure reason, they've decided that 15 miles is quote unquote non-discriminatory.
Yeah, well, yeah, well, it is. And but I mean, for us, I mean, if you're a real estate agent, I mean, obviously you don't want to market to everybody in 15 miles. I mean, especially Utah. I mean, Utah has what, 3.3 million people, but Utah also has the highest um, ratio of people under the age of 18. And well, and I guess that doesn't matter because they're not on Facebook anyway, right? Because that's where the parents are. Kids don't hang out where their parents are.
Sure.
So that all right. So that's number one. You said three, right? I
Yeah.
heard a
So
great
that's the first one.
pastor one time said, a pastor said about his sermon. He goes, today's sermon, he says, we're gonna have 3 points. Why? Because two's not enough and four is too many. That's what he said.
Well, perfect. I'll echo the pastor's sentiments then.
Yeah, I mean, it's so true too, right? You go after three, you're like, all right, are they giving us food too?
Yeah, I mean, we could give a long list, but at the end of the day, I want to make sure it's valuable for people. So
Sure, no. So what
anyway,
was
the second one, in my opinion, is just understanding lead quality and really how that applies to where they're at in their business.
lead
Um,
quality, right?
so lead quality and how that applies to their business. I guess really the best way, and I know that sounds weird as we're talking about social media, but it's just understanding how you want to market and what your strategy and approach is as you are running ads on these platforms. So, like for example, the highest lead, the best possible lead out there, in my opinion, would be somebody that you have done business before. So a past client or even a referral from a past client.
Right.
When you get those kind of leads coming in, somebody calls you, texts you, sends you a direct message, however that works.
Oh
But
yeah,
if that's the source of it, is of someone you've worked with previously or a referral from those people, you're probably going to close upwards of 60%, 70% plus of those leads that are coming in.
oh yeah. The
Um,
best call in the world is, I got your name and number from Tom and Sally. I need to sell my house right away. Can you help? You know,
yep.
slam on the brakes and kick the buyer out of the car. It's
Yeah,
like,
exactly. Because that's a very high quality lead. You're going to do business almost every single time with people that
right,
are having that conversation with you.
right,
So for me, if that's the case, then the question then becomes, okay, if that's the highest quality of lead is somebody that I've worked with before, somebody I know, or referral from somebody I know, then the question becomes, do I have a large enough audience of people that fit that description to reach my business goals?
right,
So when you talk to agents who've been in the business 20, 25, 30 years, they'll tell you that almost all of their business comes from past clients,
right. Just
referrals, people that
repeat.
they know.
Yeah,
Yeah, and that makes tons of sense because they've had all this time in the business to acquire this database
database
or
of people, right,
audience. Yeah,
or following, right,
and that's why they're so successful is they've just got this huge following of people. They
right,
market to it and it just constantly spits out business for them, right? It's not a mystery or a secret. It's the relationship that makes all the difference.
right,
Whereas one of the strategies that I help people with and we teach and we work on is we'll actually run a lead generation campaign on Facebook and what's or Instagram. And what's specific about that is that when people click on the ad, there's a lead capture form that pops up where we're collecting phone number and name and email address with the intent of generating a lead so that we can follow up and hopefully turn some business out of it. Now, when you're generating leads like that are brand new, I call them cold, and cold doesn't mean bad. It just means there's no
right.
prior relationship.
Yeah, yeah, you don't know them, right,
Yeah, exactly. And that's the big difference is you don't know them. But these kind of leads we can absolutely generate in volume, which is the benefit of it.
right.
However, the downside is that because they don't know, like, and trust you, the conversion rate on these is way, 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 way lower. I mean, statistically in the industry, we're talking around 1%.
Right. And that's on average. So, I mean, what would you say, like somebody that's a real rock star and has their systems dialed in? What are they converting at? I mean, 3%?
Yeah, I've seen people get as high as like 4 or 5%, but yes, it's because they've got their follow-up nailed down, they've got their scripts nailed down, they know exactly how to follow up with leads and turn it into business.
Right.
It's not when they first, they're definitely not converting at 4% when they first start.
No, no. So, yeah. So that's why, I mean, so cold, obviously, like you said. So if you're going to go for cold for the lack of a better word,
Mhm.
then it's all about volume. So
Yes,
if you're converting at 1%, so you have to have 100 leads to get one.
yes.
So if you want to do 2 deals a month, you have to have a minimum of 200 leads per month. Now, does that mean, so what's the conversion time? I mean, it's not like you do 200 leads in 1 month, you're going to close 2 deals that month, right? So
Correct.
if you have 200 leads coming in, they're not all coming in day one. So they're coming in over, 6 a day or 6.5 a day. So at what point, what's the pipeline time with those kind of leads? I know anywhere between 2 days and 2 years. I get that, right?
Yeah, the median that I've seen with a lot of studies that they've done and testing and following lots of agents, the average is about 115 days.
Okay. So well, that's good to know, right?
Sure.
Because if you're in day 90 and you're not getting anything, well, you're not, you're okay. You're where you're supposed to be.
Yeah, and it's all about the follow-up and the consistency. I mean,
Right.
one of the things that I like to tell people, just to kind of keep things in perspective, is, in the real estate industry, we're talking about a transaction that the average person's probably going to do a handful of times their entire life.
Oh yeah.
And so for you to think that right here, right now, this moment is the exact perfect time that they're ready to do that, I mean, it's very statistically unlikely.
Right.
And so it's all about, like you're talking about, building up this pipeline so that I'm following up with them 30 days, 60 days, whatever that process looks like. But it's being consistent through that 115-day period so that I'm turning as many of these opportunities into transactions as possible.
And that's 115 days after they kind of raise their hand, right?
Correct. Right.
So yeah, which is just shy of 4 months.
Right. So with all of that context, let me get back to the point, which is why I call this what it is. It's understanding lead quality and where you're at in your business.
Right.
Our end goal is to get to that agent's point where they've been in the business 20, 30, 40 years, whatever
Right.
that
People
is.
just call them up.
Yeah, where most of their business is coming from people that they know. That's the end goal. But the question is, how do I get there faster?
Right.
Rather than waiting 20, 30 years to get there? So for us, when I'm doing lead generation on Facebook for our clients, like when we're generating cold leads in volume,
right?
Sure, we're generating leads so that there's the potential opportunity to have somebody to work with right away. That's absolutely part of it.
Right.
But for us, that's not the end all be all, right? Our end goal is by getting somebody to fill out that form, like you talked about, that person is raising their hand saying, I'm interested. Right? I want to build up an audience of people that I know are interested, and that's one of the ways that we do it. So yes, we generate the lead and we start following up with them right away, but the bigger picture is I'm building up an audience of people that I know are interested, and I'm going to keep marketing and nurturing that group over and over again.
Right.
To get them to the point of know, like, and trust.
So if you're generating, say, 200 leads a month, and at the end of 6 months, so you have 1,200 leads in some form or fashion. And so, so the 1%, so does that mean, you're only going to get 2 a month, or is there some kind of accumulation effect that starts to kick in?
Yeah, there's absolutely an accumulation effect, because part of the strategy is once I've got that person to raise their hand and they're part of this audience, Facebook and Instagram have tracking systems that are called custom audiences, where we can track people. And the key part here is based on actions that they've taken, whether it's they've filled out a lead form, watched a video, clicked through to a website. There's all kinds of ways that we can track it, but that's the key, is it's based on some kind of action that they've taken. See, if we can get them into an audience like this based on actions they've taken and keep in front of them over and over again, then we develop that know, like, and trust factor, and there's absolutely a domino effect that happens.
Right, because if they're, like I said, if they're anywhere between 2 days and 2 years, you could hit, after a year's time of doing that, and now you're looking at, 2,400 people, a bunch of them can start to come to fruition at once. I could see where, at some point, doing this consistently day in and day out, that eventually you can start cranking out 4, 5, 6 deals a month.
Yep.
But the key, the real key, and this is for any type of marketing. Like I do a lot of calling, but I have a bunch of veins out there. And, Mike Ferry, he always said it, he says, you have to master repetitious boredom. Because we fall prey to, oh, this is boring. I've done this, it doesn't, and everybody falls 3 feet short of gold, right? And so, and if you're not quick, if you don't know that story, the book, it's so basically the guy was digging for gold, sold everything, gave up, and the next guy bought his equipment and dug 3 feet and got the gold. The first guy was just 3 feet off. He was 3 feet from gold. And so I find that most agents give up 3 feet from gold, and then they go on to the next gold. and they keep quitting 3 feet before, and they wind up never getting anything.
Sure.
So yeah, so I mean, but it's a thing. I mean, and you have to be disciplined to where you have to. I mean, well, one, you have to have, there's a lot of automation based on what you're talking about, right?
Yes.
Yeah, and so I mean, and that's your lead quality. So how? I mean, I mean, how do you sort through the? I mean, is this something you're calling, or is this just something you put them in an automation machine, and then as they start rising up out of that, then you start calling them? I mean, how's that work?
Yeah, it's going to be a hybrid. So if we're generating leads where we're getting contact information, then yes, we're going to have automated systems, phone calls, text, email, again, depending on how you want to work that strategy.
Right.
So we're going to be doing that follow up offline. But with what I'm talking about building up an audience, it's really just having this group of people that we can keep running ads to nurture
I
them,
see.
that know, like, and trust.
Yeah, because ads are probably better than email. Because I mean, I mean, as long as it's short, sweet, and they can see it.
Mhm.
But because what I mean, the email open. I mean, I mean, if you're getting 15% open, you're doing pretty good.
Sure.
Well, you give Facebook money, and they'll make sure that guy sees your ad,
They sure
right?
will.
I mean, so it's kind of almost better than email, right?
Yeah, and it's extremely inexpensive.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah, email. Because email's cheap, or can be. You start getting into some of those more expensive systems, not as cheap as you think. But if they're not opening it, they're not opening it. It's not. There's a big difference between efficient and effective.
Sure.
And I think that the social media ad, I think, can be more effective to some degree.
I agree.
Sweet. So anything else on lead quality? No?
Nope, that's the second one, lead
All
quality.
right.
Because again, we want to get to the point ultimately where we're generating all the leads from the audience, because conversion rates are just so much higher.
Right. So, and then lead quality, I mean, is, I mean, how do you determine? Well, you really don't. That's where automation comes into play. Because I'm always thinking, well, how do you filter them and sort them into which leads which? Yeah, I guess you just let automation and dripping to where they start raising their hand again. Now that because they raised your lead generating in the world, but now, and I get it. I just had the epiphany because I've said this for 1,000 years. You lead generate the world, but you brand your database. So these leads that are raising they're going into your system, and really now you're putting them in a system where you're now branding them. Got it. I mean, that's like, duh. I don't know why I never got that before.
Because that's point number 3.
Oh, point number 3, right?
That's point number 3, which is, in my opinion, everything that you're doing for marketing purposes should be all about building and branding that database, that audience. Right.
Right. Your lead generate the world, but brand your database. Right. Because I always said you have to have Nike's money or Realtor.com, Zillow money to brand the world.
Yep.
And we're not. And frankly, what are you going to do with brand in the world?
Right.
I mean, you got a $20 million budget. I mean, what are you going to have? 150,000 agents working for you? I mean, it's just like, it's just. I mean, you're an agent. I mean, you can build a team. Have like 3 showing agents. If you had 3 showing agents, there's no reason why you couldn't do 10 buyer transactions a month without walking out the door, and then maybe getting another 10 listings out of that.
Sure, you bet.
Yeah, there's no reason.
I've got plenty of clients that when they get really centered and focused on building their audience, where they've got an audience of like 10, 20, 30,000 people, and they just repetitively market to that same group of people, it's like they almost double their business like clockwork. And there's no mystery or magic to it. It's just having this golden asset of all of these people that know, like, and trust you. That's where the magic happens.
And you're no longer like marketing to a zip code per se. You're just marketing to your audience, which now, because if you're marketing to a zip code, you're marketing to everybody, whether they're interested in real estate or not. But when you're marketing to an audience, these are people that have raised their hand at some point in time. Even if they bought not from you, I mean, if they're still seeing your stuff 2-3 years later, you never know.
Sure. Yep, you've got it. That's the whole point. So
That's
since my focus is helping agents build this audience that just becomes this asset for the rest of their business, I wanted to kind of just, for the people listening to this, I wanted to give them a couple ideas of where this audience comes from and what they can be doing to build their audience right now.
sure.
So one of the key components of this audience should be their past clients, their sphere of influence.
Right.
So
That's always number one.
yeah, absolutely, hands down. So most people don't have enough of that to be the audience by itself, but that's a very key component of the audience.
Right.
So to that extent, what a lot of people don't realize is with Facebook, Instagram, if you're running ads on those platforms, Facebook actually allows you to take a list of people. You can upload that directly into your ad account, and it allows you to run ads targeted specifically to that group of people.
Right, custom audience, yeah. I think
Yeah,
custom audience.
and
is one
so
of the
it
best
has
things
nothing
out.
to do with whether they've liked your page or whether they've given you permission. The mere fact that you have their contact information
Right.
and you upload that, they view that as they've given you permission.
Yeah, you've gotten their information. Yeah, and it's not because it's not intrusive, where you're sending somebody an unwanted text. I mean, it's just people are used to just scrolling by. I mean, it's like no big deal.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah.
So that's one way that we comprise this audience, is taking that list, uploading it directly. A second way, and I know you do a lot of this, which is Facebook has tracking code. They call it a Facebook pixel.
Right.
But you can actually install that on your website so that as people come to your website, Facebook is creating an audience of people that have been to your website based on that code.
Right.
And
so you can run ads to anybody that's visited your site.
Yeah, so you can run an ad just directing people to the site, and the moment they click through and get there, that person gets pulled into this custom audience that we can market to them again.
Right.
So that's another way of building up.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. I like that.
A third one, videos. I'm a huge fan of videos. I do tons of videos for my business, but we can set up a custom audience that's tracking video views, people watching videos. And a lot of my clients who use videos to build up their audience very quickly, usually it's costing them in the range of around 3 to 6 cents to get them to watch at least 15 seconds or more of a video. I mean, it's crazy inexpensive. So
Right.
I've had people that have built up audiences of thousands of people, and it's costing, a couple $100 to do that. I mean, it's in the scheme of things, it's really inexpensive.
We have an audience of what, 10,000 people, and like you said, and that's not for the video part. But if it's costing you 2 cents to get an ad impression, so that's what times 0.02. I mean, it's $200 to hit 10,000 people.
Exactly. It's so crazy inexpensive, people just don't realize it.
Yeah.
So really, for me, that's what this whole social media marketing is about. It's not about page likes. That's not what I'm talking about.
Right.
I'm talking about custom audiences, because that's what gives us the permission. And it's the self-selection that you talked about, people raising their hand. That's how we get back in front of those people. So custom audiences, that's how we do it.
So the whole goal is to run ads that'll get people to raise their hand and trade information. Because I always said it's a trading information. I'll give you, listings. You give me, and it's not as done as much as listing. I mean, there's other things to do, but that was always the trade with an IDX site. I'll give you the listings. You give me your email address.
Right.
And so that's step number one, to build an audience that you can put into a custom audience. So every time somebody raises their hand, they're going to go into your custom audience. So then you're just running ads to them. So it's like two different ad sets. One is a lead capture ad, and then the other one is a branding ad.
You got
it. Got it. That's like, okay, that's pretty simple. And then once you build it up big enough, then you really don't have to do the first set of ads, right? You can eliminate that, pour more money, take that budget, put it back into your branding, and then, and start doubling your business.
Yep, exactly. And that's the point, is you get to a point where once you've built the audience, you're going to spend, you're in the beginning, you're going to spend the majority of your budget building, right?
Right, getting an audience.
But once the audience is there, you're going to shift where the majority of your money is going to be spent just keeping in front of what you've already built. And that's where we want to get to. That's the golden asset.
Right. So what size audience would you say you need and I guess it's a two-folded question. How large of an audience, and then over how much time? Because, if you had an audience of 1,000 today, that's great, but I would imagine it takes a different set of time. I mean, 1,000 audience today would generate so much, but over time, that same 1,000 will actually start producing more.
Sure.
So how big of an audience would you say roughly? And what's the time frame? What would that look like, say, to generate 3 to 4 transactions per month?
So to get to the point where you're doing about 3 to 4 transactions a month, you're probably going to need a database in the range of, or an audience around the range of probably about 10 to 15,000 people to do that kind of volume.
Okay.
And then, like you're talking about, the more consistent and repetitive you are with the marketing, the loyalty and the relationships you build with those people will just grow over time.
Right.
To where, you might be doing a little bit of business in the beginning, like the first 6 months, but the next 12 months is going to be very significant. Like I've had clients where they spent the first 3 months, spending a lot of money building the audience.
By getting an audience.
And then we spent 9 months cultivating it. But over that first year, they ended up doubling their production just because they were really focused on their audience.
Got it.
Yep.
Yeah, that's pretty slick. And it's all done. I mean, like you said, if you got an audience of 10,000, well, but the $200 is for them to see the ad once.
Yes.
So is there like any
kind of once and get them to raise their hand, right?
No, I'm like, if you have 10,000 people, right? And then so, I mean, so how often do you want your audience to see your ad? I mean,
yeah, great question. The frequency that I use for my clients and what I teach is weekly. So we put out content every single week, and then when they're building, we have one ad that's going out to a new audience of people to add them to this audience that we're building. And then we have a second ad that's running to nurture and build trust and credibility, the branding part.
Right. So the branding, the audience, but so this is lead generation bucket, and then this is your audience bucket. So your audience bucket, they should see something from you at least once a week.
Correct. Yep.
Okay. So, I mean, and if you did that 10,000 people, I mean, it could cost you, it's under $1,000, but if you're doing 4 deals a month, I mean, if your average commission is $12,000, that's $48,000 gross revenue. And then that's like, let's see, would you trade me $1,000 for 48,000?
Yep. That seems pretty good to me. I'm happy to do that.
Yeah. I mean, I would go out and leverage houses to get as many thousands as I could to get that back. Right.
Yep.
Yeah. So, and then how long would you say it takes to get somebody, how long and what's the likelihood expense to get them up to 10,000?
So again, if it's costing around 5-6 cents per person, what is that? It's going to cost in the neighborhood of, what is that?
So when you say 5 to 6 cents, that's per lead.
Yeah, like if people are watching videos, like I said, it's costing my clients around 5-6 cents.
Okay.
So if we want an audience of 10,000 at 5 cents,
well, that'd be $500.
Yeah.
And how long would it take to get
$500 is you can spread it out. So if agents don't want to spend that like right up front and build the audience really quickly,
well, you can do $100 a month.
Exactly.
It just takes a little longer.
Sure.
So if you wanted to ramp it up in fast time, you could actually spend more money and just say 500 a month. And at the end of 2-3 months, you could have a really sizable audience.
You sure can. You bet.
Oh, that's pretty slick.
Yep. And so this is how we can speed up that process to get to the end game where those agents who have been in the business 20, 30 years and they just have this huge database of people. This is how we get to that process faster.
In a year.
Yes.
Right. Yeah, and it's funny, Hobbs and Herder. Do you remember that name, Hobbs and Herder?
I'm not familiar with that one, no.
So they're a brand, I believe they're still around. They were like a real high-end branding in the real estate space company. So that was like who you hired, and they would build you like a brand. And so, your logo, your brochures, your postcards, your business cards. Then they, started working into the web space. I mean, they were around long before the web space. I mean, they're very pricey, but they built you the whole package.
Sure.
And so they were the ones that came up with, you've heard of the 8x8, right?
Yeah, of course.
So they're the ones that actually developed the 8x8. And so the way the 8x8, so how it started was, so what they did is they did an experiment. So they took it, and this is back before the social media, but the principles still apply. So they took a geographic farm of 5,000 homes that was dominated by an agent. And so what they did is they sent out a survey and said, if you were to sell your home, who would you list with? Well, 50% of the respondents, not the 5,000 people, just those that responded, chose this dominant agent, this agent that controlled this farm. So then they did that, and then they did an 8x8. 1 week a postcard, another week a letter, a brochure, a card. And they did 8 touches in 8 weeks. Then they did a second survey and said, if you were to sell, who would you list your home with? Well, 25%, right? So half of the respondents chose this dominant agent. 25%, chose this new agent, right? So this guy went in and took half their farm away. But here's the kicker. The new agent was fictitious. And so they were proving that it was about marketing.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if you took so that same philosophy works, and then, and there's ways of getting lists, right? Correct, Kevin, to, let's say if you wanted to get a geographic farm of 5,000 homes, so, and then you can extract, you can buy that list where you got their name, phone number, and email. Now, not every record, all 5,000 is going to have a name, phone number, and email, but they're all going to have a name and address. And then what would you say the ratio is of some contact information besides name and address?
A lot of the data companies that I've seen, it's usually around 60, 70%.
So if you have 5,000 home unit farm, you would get 3,000, you would have contacts for about 3,000. Now, out of that number, how many would actually, that contact information would be tied to a Facebook account?
Again, statistically, what I tend to see is right around 50, 60%.
Okay, so if you had 5,000 units, you got 3,000 with contact records, and then 60% of that, another 1,800. So you can literally build an 1,800 unit geographic farm just by spending some money, right?
Yep.
So that, why not, right?
Right. And so like a lot of my people that I have that do that, they'll usually do that either in an area where they like to work, they're just geographically farming that area, or sometimes it's just their neighborhood, they want to be the real estate agent for their neighborhood. Yeah.
Yeah, I always say get lazy, right? And you go, what do you mean? I go, open the front door, look left, look right. There's your farm, So, but I mean, there's some truth in that. But I actually used to teach if you're farming, you want to pick an area that has a minimum of a 6% turnover ratio.
Sure, and that makes sense. You bet.
Which tends to be starter homes. And starter homes have a couple good reasons if you're going to geographically farm them. One is they turn over more, right? Because they're smaller, people buy them. What's the likelihood of some young family in Utah having kids, right? I mean, call me silly, but I think it's pretty good, So then, so they tend to turn over faster, and they're more likely to get a job somewhere else, for various reasons. They outgrow it, whatever. So, that's one reason. The second reason is because they were first-time homebuyers, they're first-time sellers. They're more, I want to use the word orphaned, right? Is their agent following up? So their agent's either A, not following up with them, or 2, they're no longer in the business. And that's a good probability that they're no longer in the business 3 to 4 or 5 years later. And so those are more adoptable, where if you get a neighborhood like where I live and people have been here, this is their second or third home, their real estate agent is more likely in touch with them than you would say a first-time buyer/seller neighborhood. They're just more, I think they're easier to adopt. That's just my philosophy. And if you're the listing agent on those, adopt a buyer, right? So a lot of people don't do that. adopt a past client. So if you sell a listing, you should have two past client, right? The seller, plus you already know the buyer's name and address because it's on the contract. You know where they live. So you show up Saturday morning with pizzas and carry a couple boxes, and give them pizza and get their phone number while you're there and their email. Next thing you know, they're in your past database.
Yep.
Yeah, so absolutely. Yeah, this is good stuff.
Yeah.
You got my head spinning.
So that's the whole key. I have seen where my clients have seen the greatest success using social media is, as weird as it sounds, their focus isn't generating leads. That's part of the strategy.
Right.
The focus is we want to build the audience, because
it's generating an audience.
It's just a constant source of business for the rest of their career.
Oh man, that's good stuff. Man, that's awesome. So that, I mean, so if somebody wanted to ask you questions, how can someone get a hold of you?
Sure. So if people have questions, I'm fine to give my number. It's 801-835-4971. That is my cell phone. If people want to reach out, text me, call me, whatever. Or if you want to go to my website, find out more about our services and classes and things that we offer.
Sure.
Website is just my name. It's kevinsmullin.com, KEVINSMULLIN.com.
Right. And if you go to YouTube and search Kevin Smullen, you'll find your YouTube channel. I find Kevin's YouTube channel to be a very, very good resource. I mean, how many videos do you have up there now?
Close to about 350.
Yeah, 350 videos, all primarily on Facebook
marketing.
Yeah, yep. 350. I mean, I didn't even know there was 350 ideas. I'm sure some of them are, they're updated versions.
Yes, absolutely, of course.
Facebook, I mean, they're always changing things all the time.
Yeah, of course, you bet.
So, but the philosophy of what the original video was still there. It's just that now we have to redo it because the way they change it around.
Yeah, and the concept, you're right, the concept stays the same. Sometimes Facebook's interface changes, so it looks a little different, but the functionality is in essence the same.
Yeah, they don't really make too many like across the board rule changes, right?
Not a whole lot, no.
No.
Just usually just the way that it looks. Yeah.
Right. And GoDaddy does the same thing. I swear GoDaddy does that to intentionally have you call in the tech support so they can try and upsell you. I swear that's the reason why. So
yeah. So
well, this is great stuff. So thank you so much. Thanks for joining.
My pleasure.
Again, this is Kevin Smullen. What a great guest. This is Productive Agent podcast powered by Aubrey Home Loans. And you have any questions for me on, on anything, I don't care, real estate related, but if you have somebody that needs a loan, by all means, call me 801-999-8209, or you can always email me, rob@aubrey.net. And that's it. Thanks again, guys. See ya.